Welcome to the second hour. We are going to have a conversation about mental health and integrating the mental health conversations in the county integrated development plans and, of course, then budgets as well. We have our guest in the studio, the Honorable Architect Sylvia Kasanga, former nominated senator, who was behind a push to have the law amended and upgraded, and she's a mental health champion. To welcome her, City has a proverb.
Yes, this is our final proverb from Libya.
Eh.
The night has ears and the day eyes.
The night has ears
And the day
and the day
eyes. You could say
eyes.
has eyes, but yes, the day has eyes, the night ears.
Where? Sylvia,
I tell you.
good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Does that make sense to you?
I guess in a way,
Okay.
the night has ears because there's no light. Of course, it's darkness. So you use the ears to sense what is happening. The day has, as I'm coming, I have to be careful, has eyes.
As eyes.
Has eyes.
The night has ears.
Yes.
The day has eyes.
As eyes.
So I guess a sense of sensory as and when is required. You use your ears when it's required. You use your eyes. When there's the light, you use that to see. I guess there's something there.
You're never alone.
I don't know.
You are even if you think that you're alone,
Yes.
you're not alone. That's my interpretation of it. You can never do anything. Oh, no, it's in the dark. Their ears
There are those who actually would argue that the night has both eyes and
and ears.
The nocturnal creatures that we refer to can see in the dark.
That's right. They do.
Where? Anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I thank God.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. You're looking well and healthy.
I am. I don't have the burden of parliament. So I am happy, but we have work to do. It doesn't stop us from having work to do.
Very good.
Yes.
And also now it also allows you time to run and prepare yourself for the Standard Charter Nairobi Marathon at the end
Oh,
of this
yes.
month.
Absolutely. Yes.
Ndu is recruiting.
Yes.
All
Are you?
all the women, let's come out and do this thing.
Yes.
Run on the 31st. If you can't do it on the 31st, on the 30th. If you can't do it on the 30th, we can do the virtual one from the 23rd to the 30th. Log in those times and get your name up on that leaderboard. So, let's do it. Feel like an athlete, but at the same time run for a good cause. Yes?
I agree. And physical health is important.
Kabisa.
Every
Kabisa.
day I get one.
Every day you get a
Every day I get
recruiter.
Yes, a good thing.
Yeah. We're helping you. We are working with you.
Thank you very much.
We shall make sure that by the end of this month you have at least 30 people whom you've recruited directly.
Thank you very much.
For every recruit, we want 5,000 shillings.
Everyone-
Yeah?
You didn't hear what I said. It's for a good cause.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's a good cause.
But Eric
For
has
you.
just mentioned a very good cause at a discount.
When you give us the 5,000 shillings, we will also put it into a
Very good use.
To be for a good cause.
it will be for a good cause.
Okay.
Sylvia, you're saying you're really, really busy. And there is now the conversation about the mental health conversation into the counties, having spearheaded the amendment of the mental health law in the Senate, and that was assented to by the president. Now it's about seeing the implementation of the new law. So what are you doing?
Now, first, let's celebrate that October is largely known as the Mental Health Month. So there's going to be a lot of activity around mental health. And I'm glad actually you called me here because a lot of the activity starts actually today, Saturday, and culminating on Monday, which is 10th of October, is a World Mental Health Day. But normally it will run the whole month. There'll be lots of activities in the counties. A lot of people are engaging, a lot of CSOs and NGOs are engaging on mental health activities to raise awareness, as always. So this is a special month for us champions, mental health champions. Yeah, and I keep getting asked the question, has the bill been, has the Act of Parliament been, what's the word they use? Has it been published? Yes, the question is published. Because after assent, it is required to be published. And I just want to clarify that, if you allow me.
Yeah.
And I want to tell Kenyans today that actually we have an Act of Parliament on mental health that is in force, and this is looking at Article 116 of our Constitution on coming into force of laws, that a bill passed by Parliament and assented to by the President shall be published in the Gazette as an Act of Parliament within 7 days after assent. But subject to Clause 3, the Act of Parliament comes into force on the 14th day after its publication in the Gazette. So I need to tell Kenyans that the bill is in force.
Wait, so was it published?
The Act
in the
is
Gazette?
in force.
Was it published?
I actually haven't checked. And I had
Because those two that you've read,
Yeah.
so it is gazetted 7 days after, within 7 days after
Yes.
assent,
Yes.
and then it becomes operational
Yes.
14 days after gazettement.
Yes.
So gazettement is at a very important step here then. So if it's not gazetted,
No. Actually, I checked with Parliament yesterday that it was gazetted.
Okay.
Yes. And that question keeps coming up. So I think it just needs to be fished out from the Kenya Gazette. It is there. And we do have an Act of Parliament on mental health. And the Act, I don't know if we've had this conversation on the Act. And I always keep saying I don't hear enough conversation around it, especially from the people who matter. When they come on studio, when they go on TV, I don't hear the mention that we actually have an Act of Parliament. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal, not just in this country. It's a big deal in our region. Because we did interact with a lot of regional partners when we were creating this Act of Parliament. So it's a critical act where we are. Mental health, if we are going to read the definition of it, which I will want to, then we'll realize why, as a nation, if we're going to talk about seriously rebuilding our economy and having Kenyans engage to the level of their full productivity, then mental health must be prioritized.
what is mental health? Let's just start from there then.
Thank you.
Define it.
I'll define it from the Act of Parliament that we had, because we actually used the definition that is in the
But you
WHO.
know, this thing which looks like a title deed is what exactly?
This is what it is. This is an act of...
Iko mpaka na seal
this
na
one.
ribbon.
I'm telling you. In fact, there's the one that is actually ascended to. It has the president's signature here.
So how do I get a
that is
copy?
in-
How do I
is
get
in
one like
Parliament.
this?
This one you have to talk to me very nicely.
I'll talk to you.
No, you talk to me first.
Okay, I'll talk to CT.
The highs will have it.
So,
Definition of mental health.
mental health, which we should all have in our minds, and that we should all know. Oh gosh, let me look for it
It's in definitions.
here. Don't know why I can't.
That first
find it.
page.
This first page gives the purpose of the act.
And the second one, where we have definitions.
Sylvia, take your time.
Thank you.
This looking for things is something we've been doing ourselves in this
it's
month.
I tell
It's
you.
a big thing.
Eric
You
looked,
feel
I
pressure, you
looked.
have to just start beating anyhow.
Do looked.
And then you
Eventually
start
you'll find it.
And it's not nice.
So as you look, let me
Yeah.
talk about the Mental Health Act.
Yes.
Was amended through an amendment bill that was sponsored by Senator Sylvia Kasanga in the 12th Parliament.
Yes.
It was passed and assented into law on the 21st of June 2022. It should have been then gazetted 7 days thereafter, coming into force 14 days thereafter. And it talks about the very many things that the purpose of amending was to align with to the Constitution, including listing the role of the national government and the county governments in promoting mental health. The Act is prescriptive on the role of counties, with the use of shall as a mandate on what the counties ought to do when it comes to implementation and programs on matters mental health. See, because you have that one that looks like a title deed, that's
Let
why
me
you
tell
can't
you, I
find
can't.
the definition of mental health in it. You'll find it as we
I'll
continue.
find it as we continue,
Don't
and I'll
worry.
read it for you as
Don't
we
worry.
as we move forward.
So, what was the importance of having this Mental Health Act?
Well, after the new constitution was promulgated, a lot of the laws that had been in existence before had to be, of course, brought into the new dispensation. And this one was left out somehow. This was left out. When the Health Act was done, 2017, the Health Act recognizes that mental health requires to have its own legislation. And therefore, it should have been done at some point after the promulgation of the new constitution. So the Mental Health Act that was in existence was one of 1989 that had been slightly amended in 1999. So it was really old dated and not recognizing the fact that health is a devolved function. Mental health is a devolved function as well, because it falls under the ambit of the Health Act. So there was work to do, bringing it first into the current dispensation, defining the roles of national government and the roles of the county government being the first most important thing about mental health. And, you know, as we understand mental health and the essence of mental health, a lot of the work goes to the county as the implementers of programs, fighting stigma, you know, making sure we have a battalion of mental health workers and practitioners that are helping, you know, Kenyans and our citizens. And this is because globally, mental health has shifted from being dealt with in institutions to being dealt with at the community level, at the home level. So you'll hear a lot of psychiatrists, you know, speak towards community-based psychiatry. And that is really best practice today. And then there's, of course, the issue of human rights, the Bill of Rights, the rights of people living with disabilities, and the UN, you know, the UN approach towards such rights. And with people living with mental illnesses, they are covered under such rights. So we needed an act of parliament that recognizes the rights of people living with mental illnesses. So it's very important. And this had never been there before. But what I celebrate the most, and what I always say, was my biggest contribution to this act was the role of the counties. Because by then I was clear what we need to do as county governments to help our citizens.
How long had the act been in place when mental health was being declared by former President Uhuru Kenyatta as a national emergency?
Actually, he didn't declare it.
It was never
It was
declared.
a recommendation by
Recommendation by the committee.
by the
of
task
Yes,
force.
yes.
So how long had
Yes.
the act been in place by the time this declaration was or recommendation was being made?
The act actually was assented to in June this year, 21st June 2022. That's when the president put his signature on it.
On
So
it.
there was no act of parliament
There
at
was
that time.
nothing at that
That
time.
was at the height of advocacy work to get the bill passed in parliament. And we had a battalion of stakeholders who had come on board to help with this push. And I remember, in fact, very well, when we started, the first time I published the bill was in 2018. And in 2019, we started a lot of engagements. And by then, of course, Senate was onto it. And Senate passed the bill the first time. It was towards the end of 2019 that the Mental Health Task Force was formed. They went round and they produced the wonderful report, which I like to always make reference to. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to interact with this report. It's a very important report, the mental health and well-being towards happiness and national prosperity. Actually, it captures the length and the breadth of mental health in this country. You get a good understanding of the status of mental health in this country. They didn't publish this report until probably April in 2020, at the height of COVID.
Yeah.
By then we had the ad hoc COVID committee and we're demanding that we want this report because then it would give us a basis in which to check Kenyans during the lockdowns.
Sure.
As you can imagine how it was for Kenyans. So it was around that time.
Around that time.
Yes.
Now, I mean, I hear you saying that this work needs to be taken to the counties because I mean, it's clear, we always talk about it in this room, where a day will not go by that we're looking in the paper and there's an issue, whether it is a mother who has taken the lives of her children and then gone on to take her own life, whether it is, you know, two people in an amorous relationship and one has killed the other because of whatever and then has gone on to take their own life, whether it is the abuse of drugs and alcohol because of terrible economic situations. I mean, we're replete with examples every day, many times in a day. So it is clear that there is an issue.
Definitely.
It is clear
Definitely.
that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And rising. I think we are seeing some of the highest numbers of young people consuming alcohol and drugs, not teetotaling, not for social fun and entertainment, but to the point of abuse. The numbers are
Absolutely.
rising on a daily basis.
Yes.
There's something wrong.
Yes.
Anybody can see that, even with the lights off and your eyes closed.
Absolutely.
Is there, though, whether it's at national level or county level, goodwill to deal with this, number one? Number two, the mechanisms that you obviously say need to be put in place at county level, at ward level, whether it is hiring, whether it is buddying up with the positions that already exist. The infrastructure that's needed to set this up would be monumental. But is there at least the recognition that this is top of the priority list that needs to be handled?
When it comes to goodwill, first I say this is why these conversations are important, because how else do you create goodwill? How else do you push your leaders to understand what really we want? We have to advocate for it. We have to, champion. We have to push this agenda and keep talking about it. I always tell my stakeholders whenever we speak that the work has just started. Yes, we managed to get an act of parliament in place, but to get it implemented and operationalized, we really have to hold to task the people who are in charge of it. So we are looking for this goodwill. This is the goodwill we are looking for. And one thing that makes me very happy is that we have senators who voted for this act who are now governors. Actually, that is my opening place. That's my approach. Because I'm telling them, we did this together. We understand what needs to be done for Kenyans. So can we start with your counties in the first place? Let's get this CIDP to make sure they all have a budget line for mental health. And it can start. And by the way, there are some counties that are already having very active programs on mental health. The second thing, why we must get this goodwill, and I know it is coming, is because a lot of the leaders after this electioneering period will tell you their experience with Kenyans. Because it is during this electioneering period you interact, our leaders interact properly.
With the real Kenyans.
With Kenyans. And they will tell you what they have come across. We have a citizenry that is suffering mentally for all the reasons that you're saying and a lot more. Our environment has really, really traumatized and caused Kenyans a lot of mental health issues. And our leaders know it. And they saw it.
Sylvia.
Yeah.
Wouldn't we, in addition to what you're saying, which is absolutely true, consider the mental health of our leaders also? Because if you look at the problems that we have that eventually cascade down to the Mwananchi, they start somewhere. The way in which we are ruled, the way in which we are governed, the way in which our resources are utilized for everything and anything other than for our benefits. Because the contributory factors, if you look at it from a family perspective, whatever pressures parents have is passed on to the children.
Yes.
And the children, it's not what the parents do, it's what the children imbue, what they see.
Yes.
And then with social media,
Yes.
all these pressure points are then passed on at a speed faster than even the speed of light. But basics that we can understand. If we're talking about, we segment these issues and say, okay, there are these social issues that have to do with governance. It's those in leadership whom we must look at, not even two. Because looking to them can be a faulty exercise. Then there's the issue of the economic disadvantages that come with mismanagement and how it is that it contributes seriously to the lives of these people. Now, these are the problems that we deal with. Most of them are consequences. They are caused by some of these larger issues. So if the larger issues aren't really addressed properly, this vicious cycle is all going to come to an end.
Yes.
It will not come to an end. Now,
Yes.
the thing that the leadership also doesn't seem to understand is that Kenyan leaders have a very good people whom they govern over. This moving on, Kenyans do it very well. But we need to have certain basic things in place for us to move along nicely. And this is the fundamental problem.
Exactly.
And that's why I say the mental health
Starts with the leaders.
Of our leaders.
Yes, it has to be, because
agree.
it's them we depend on
I
to
agree.
ensure that certain things are put in place.
I agree totally. Because we have to start somewhere.
Yes.
This vicious cycle
Yes.
has to come to an end. We can't always sweep things under the rug and move on the way we are used to, because these things have not gone away. If they're not dealt with, they've not gone away.
Yes.
It must start with the leaders. And in fact, one of the first things that we've already discussed that we must do is this new round of leaders have to be sensitized on what is mental health and what is their role when it comes to the well-being, the mental well-being of Kenyans, and what they must do thereof. So actually, we've already had some of these conversations with some of the senators right now, that we organize some breakfast sessions with them, and then we do the same with the National Assembly leaders. And the same is going to happen with the CECs, because I know the COG is going to be inducting the CECs once they're all fully in place. That conversation must happen with the CECs. Hopefully that
Speakers
conversation...
are meeting in Mombasa from this weekend.
Yes.
You should be there too.
I am not invited there, but my target is with the CECs first.
Turn up there.
Actually,
The leadership of counties.
you know, these meetings
Yeah.
that are in Mombasa, you know, if you don't meet in Naivasha, Mombasa, you know, you can't really arrive at some
Yeah, this is the
Some
best
the
place.
significant-
best place or binding decisions. But
But you see, just to echo what you were saying, CT, maybe Sylvia, as you talk about, meeting these leaders, for instance, what they should be doing at the County Speakers Forum in Mombasa this weekend, where they are being inducted, is also bringing mental health experts and having sessions and booths
Absolutely.
where they actually
Yes.
they need sessions.
Yeah, they do.
In
And not necessarily a one-off.
In addition to them being sensitized on the importance of their people being themselves first, waende walale chini kwa meza pale, unasikiaje leo? Or whatever
And they
happens.
get therapy or something like
Yeah.
that.
They start.
you know, they need to.
If those speakers don't, then what are the county assembly is going to do? If these members of the National Assembly, all of them, if they don't do this, the 349 in the National Assembly, all the senators in the Senate, the 67 of them, right?
When they're freshly minted, like now,
This is the time.
this is it. Because the rent-seeking behavior that is symptomatic of these houses, whether at the county level or the national level, will overtake every other interest.
Yeah.
And this particular parliament, we've already seen signs. They come in and they're already talking about
ECDM, SRC.
Well, you can see how much work we have to do as champions because we have to keep pushing this conversation, and we will get friends in these places who can also help with the conversation and pushing it. And I am not doubtful because I know a lot more are aware of the status of Kenyans' mental health, and they will want to do something about it, and they will.
I doubt.
We have
No, I
leaders
doubt.
who understand.
Yeah.
We
not-
have some.
Not many
Not
of
all,
them are aware.
but there are some.
You
And
know,
you
in
see,
terms of being aware is, for example, having internalized that report
Yes.
of the task force
Yes.
by Dr. Frank Jenga and the team, and knowing that this is what experts went around the country and this is what they found
saying.
and this is what they recommended to the government, and understanding. I'm sure if you went and just stood outside Parliament and asked them, Umayona report, did you know about the task force? Many of them will tell you, yeah, gani yo?" They don't know.
why I'm hopeful, why I'm under, you guys know, I'm an optimist to a great extent.
To
I
a
am
fault.
hopeful because I know already it is happening. Kisumu County already has a directorate on mental health. They already have a policy in place. And the entire Nyanza region looks to Kisumu County for interventions. They already know, they've already mapped out the needs of their people. And you can imagine how varied they are because Nyanza has, so many tribes, so many customs and things like that. And they've been able to map out, they've used stakeholders who've been working in some CSO that have been working in Kisumu over the years. They've used those people to help their directorate be able to set up a policy. And they've been having a budget line for mental health actually for a while.
Oh.
Same as Nairobi County. You'll be surprised. In fact, if I tell you, just this morning I was speaking to Stella Wariungi, who is the one who's the champion for mental health in Nairobi County. And they've already established mental health coordination mechanisms within the county in 10 sub-counties. And they already have focal persons in each of those sub-counties. They have established 27 mental health clinics within the primary health care facilities in Nairobi. And that is what actually the Act of Parliament is calling for, an integration. So every health facility has practitioners there. So you can get a wholesome review whenever you go in. They have experts who are going round, also psychiatrists, who go round within the facilities. All right? Then they have child-friendly spaces within this place because the children also need to be looked into whenever they go to hospital. Then the Pumwani, this I like very much because Pumwani already has a maternal mental health care services that are already running. They have a psychiatrist and a psychologist and social workers who are already resident within Pumwani to support the mothers. So it is not a lot, but it is a step in the right direction. And with time, an increase of budget means then there's an increase towards the services.
Very good.
My own county, Makueni, you know very well, has been having very a robust mental health program for its citizens. Again, we are calling for now the structures to be put in place because, the Act is very prescriptive, like you said, on matters mental health. Actually, it says very clearly the county government shall do 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want, we can read them if time allows. but it's very prescriptive on what the county must do.
Let's talk about it after the break. 28 to 8, this is the Situation Room on KTN Home, on SpiceFM, or online. As we take a break with the Honorable Sylvia Kasanga, who is mental health champion, who's talking about integrating mental health in the county integrated development plans.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The conversation continues with Sylvia Kasanga, mental health champion, talking about taking the mental health conversation to the counties.
The reason why the Nairobi County is unique is because they have done something that has been advised, the ministry has policies on, but very many counties have not bothered to action. It's called creating what you call community units. Because with community units, you will get lay mental health personnel, you'll even get trained, but at a level where the needs that present themselves can be met. We don't have enough psychiatrists to go around, we don't have clinical psychologists, but you do have people who are trained in counseling, trauma management, at certificate diploma level, and many of them comprise the cadre of employees we call community health workers. Now, in the absence of these people working at the community level, you will not be able to deal with this. And they're useful because they live in that community. They know the community, they know the individuals. And so the buy-in and acceptability factor is easily sorted out. And so the success stories will be grand. Now, this county, Nairobi, have actually established it. So yes, they have. Now, if you look at counties that had for the longest time that registered high prevalence of HIV, one of the things that was associated with HIV was also mental health issues. More so dementia, people who had stage 4. Now, Kisumu is one of those counties, and they already had partners who worked in this field, provide care and treatment. So it's something that has been, Homa Bay had them, Migori, that region. Now, those who are careful enough to have engaged with the partners they had at the time and who created this, and then the counties themselves took over. Yes, we'll have the structure and they will know exactly what to do. So no stone will be left unturned. But those who didn't have a long way to go.
Yes. Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. Because what we want is exactly what you're saying. We want every county to have these community-based health workers. It must start there. People who know each other, to speak to each other about mental health, to raise the awareness, to give information. The things that cause the stigma, which is the biggest deterrent towards seeking help when it comes to mental health, is stigma. And how do you fight stigma? Other than using the community healthcare workers. And that is how the HIV was dealt with during its time. And I want to read that I found the definition.
Okay.
I found it. That mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. When you see that definition by WHO in 2005, then you realize there's a lot of conversations we need to have, especially in, shall I call it, a volatile environment that we are in because of the economy, because of war. You know, we have parts of our country that is at war. We have drought that is really affecting us. You know, we have climate change as well that is affecting us. We have a volatile environment, and our citizens need to be supported at all times because somehow we have to learn to adapt to the ever-changing environment. We have to adapt to, like, the social media that is really affecting us, the things around us. We have to be able to cope with situations where, I always complain, you find a lot of advertisements on alcohol, yet we know alcoholism, drug use and abuse is very high amongst our young people. So how do we cope with our environments, given they are the way they are, you know? That sort of support is required. And in a country where we have a big gap in provision of such services, such facilities, such practitioners, where can we start? You know, so the counties have a huge duty. And if I was to go through this list is very long. The role of the counties is very long. But it lends towards, besides just creating a budget line, is creating county-specific programs. Because we realize that every county is different. We have pastoralist counties. We have our, Nyanza region that, like you have rightfully said, have a history from HIV, which still probably affects them. The post-trauma
Still does.
It still does from those days. We have counties that have dealt with issues of drought, dry areas, including my own Makueni and parts of, Kitui. We struggle with, such like things.
Yeah.
We have the coastal region that has its own challenges, drug use and substance abuse and things like that. So each county must
Should
have
come up with their own program.
specific programs in which they can roll out and they can start. And again, another requirement is for each county to have a mental health council. And a mental health council does not require 9 people. Sometimes we also we want to start too big. I keep saying no. You can have a council of 2 or 3 people who understand what needs to be done. The Makueni program was probably rolled out by one doctor, Professor Ndete, who rolled that out. That was, one person. You don't need 20 people to be able to roll out. These things can be started in a small way. And the important thing, and what we are calling out for, is that it must start. And for the counties that have already started, we need to look towards their success stories and borrow those for the counties that haven't started.
Professor David Ndete and his concern for mental health has had very far-reaching positive consequences. He actually has a mental health foundation.
Yes, he does.
That does such work. And, beyond just what we know as mental health, he has been very instrumental long before we found what we now take for granted, peace in Somali, the country, Somalia. Yes. This Professor David Ndete had been involved in many conferences that dealt with peacekeeping for the longest time, year in, year out. Now, one may ask, peacekeeping, mental health, birds of a feather.
Yep.
But the thing that worries me, Sylvia, is the youth. Mental health among the youth. No one stays young forever. These young people will grow up. They will be adults. Asian crocs like myself will go, and these younger people will come in. Now, you tell me, what do we expect when you can talk about a generation that has serious mental health issues going into adulthood? What do you think will become of us?
Oh my goodness. In fact, just yesterday, it's good you mentioned that. Yesterday, I participated in a survey that is being done by some stakeholders who want to push for a policy that looks into the mental health of our adolescents. And they're saying, in as much as we have policies on mental health that is general, and we have laws that cover the rights of children, there's need in our country to look specifically towards the adolescent. So you're right, because I have come to learn that mental health issues start at adolescence, actually the age of 14, and sometimes even younger. And if they're not dealt with as the brains continue forming, because brains fully form at the early 20s, then these mental health issues become very adverse mental health illnesses. So you will have a population, to answer you, of very mentally unwell Kenyans. And these are our leaders, they're our parents of tomorrow. So actually, you're right. And I agreed with the people doing the survey that this is something that needs to be, to be pushed, that we must look at the mental health of our teenagers. It is critical and crucial that we do so. Because again, looking at our population and statistics, there are quite a sizable, of our population, the young people in that age bracket, below 20.
The discussion we have from time to time about education, its usefulness, the perception of education at higher levels, tertiary levels, and the youth's perception of it. And that has moved to the uselessness of education, because you have an education, but then what do you do with it? Now, then there was a discussion of opportunities, meaning where you can take your education to, what your education can help you with, okay? Now, with all this, something arises which in my mind is not just explosive, no, it's not just incendiary, it is catastrophic. If you have an entire generation of people who are despondent because they have no hope, they don't see, when we talk about the drinking, these are consequences. This is not really the problem, it's a symptom. They don't see the need that other people have for doing all these wonderful things, planning for the future. What future? Doing this. So this issue of immediacy, You know this rise of young people involved in crime and doing crazy things?
Yep.
It's immediacy. It's a mental health problem because their minds are focused on, as I said again, immediacy. Why should I worry about tomorrow? Let me live for today. Today is good enough. Now, we have created it, and this is a problem that we have put on the shoulders, those of us who are older, of these young people. That's why I started off with the leadership. How do you deal with an entire generation of people whose starting off point is one of mistrust? They feel, we saw it reflected in our elections. We have more registered voters in this election than we had in the previous one, and yet less people voted. And many of them were youth. It's a clear statement. Why are they bothering with this process? They don't see the need.
What's the
They feel
point?
very let down.
What is the point?
What is the point? We've
And-
already been let down.
Yes, and the question they're asking is a valid one.
Yeah, we've been left to our own means. That is true.
The older people are fortunate in that they can look back into their lives and they can think of days when things were not as bad as this. But these young people, it's just bad followed by something worse, followed by something terrible. Now, how can that not affect your mind?
Very true. And the way I look at mental health, and when I do my mentorships, I want to approach mental health as a way of empowering the self, the person, by telling them, you need to be more aware of yourself. You need to understand yourself to the extent of what can I handle and what can I handle. Where if I go, I know I can see that if I go here, I will be upset, I will not work well, or I will not sleep well, so I don't go there. Where I have understood myself to the extent that I know if I should, hang out with, when I speak to the younger ones, when I hang out with this group of people, it affects me in this way. So I want to avoid that. In a way to bring them to a level of self-awareness around their environment and what they need to avoid for their own mental wellness. So that sort of personal awareness is a thing we need to raise amongst our youth so that they can understand that everyone's power is within themselves.
Sure.
As opposed to, I am only me because of that other person, that I cannot have a full life, even if my leader is doing A, B, C, D. Your life is not dependent entirely on that leader, that you can actually have control over your mental wellness regardless of your environment around you. And actually this report, this task force report, has a very good analysis of the social and other determinants of mental illness. It's there under chapter 5. And I like making reference to it because when you understand that the things around you can affect you mentally, then you need to realize to strengthen yourself such that you're not always affected and you know what to avoid if you can, what you can avoid or what you can do to adapt towards a certain environment that you're then having to live within. So it has to be something about personal self-awareness and raising that personal strength and understanding of your mind. I believe that is where it must start.
Sure. How would it look if we're looking around the country? How then would this look? All these plans that are being put in place are getting the act to then come to life. How would it look when we are now saying at the county level, at the ward level, facilities available for you to go in and have a chat with somebody, it doesn't matter what age you are at, that you can actually do this and have then a conversation with someone about the situation in which, how would this look, how would this play out around the country?
You see, I want to refer back again to Nairobi County because there are success stories here in Nairobi. And when I interacted with Stella and her team and saw the work that they are doing, how their data, they now have data. Because what happens once you put structures into place, then you can get data. You can see in this facility, we have put mental health practitioners, and this is the impact. We have had, more people first come to the facility. We have so many people seeing the mental health experts. There are those who keep coming back, either because they want to continue having the conversation, they have the statistics around that. And that is a good thing. You can see people are believing. So they come back because they're believing, or they send more people because they're believing. So you see the statistics of people going into those facilities growing significantly. And that's a good thing. When we have data, then we can have a serious conversation. Part of the reasons that we keep, not having enough faith that these things can work is because we've not tried them. We don't have the data to see the impact that some of these things have. The impact of having a mental health practitioner in a level 1. The day you put one there and the people come and they get this wholesome service where you've gone with bodily pains, they can't find anything wrong with you, and then they sit you down at the corner and, have sort of a mentorship counseling session, and that person goes, a very fulfilled, human being, you see the impact of it, because he will definitely encourage other people.
So what kind of data are they collecting? So first of all, they have the number of people who are seeing the person who's been assigned the role of mental health at a facility. Now, is this person coming to them out of referral from the main facility by the clinical officer, by the clinician, or is it somebody who is coming directly to see this person? Then secondly, then what is the impact of that?
You see,
do we know then what happens thereafter?
That now you have to call Stella here to take you through the detail of it. It's an amazing work they have done, honestly. And you have to call her here so that she can explain herself and show you the data for Nairobi County.
Okay.
That I'll not speak for her because I don't have it fully.
But in terms of
but you will see the
Go ahead,
impact
go
of
ahead,
what, when you put structures in place, the impact it has on the citizenry. It is instant and you can see it. And actually what you want is more of that. More practitioners, more practitioners in more of the lower level. Because then the referral system also begins to work. Then you can now find, from the level 2, they start moving up to level 3, level 4. The referral system actually begins to work, which is something we want to see happening.
Because what you're pushing for is establishment of such structures in the counties.
Yes.
And starting from the very beginning, when you're coming up with the CIDPs, make sure that you have programs that are specific to mental health.
Absolutely.
And then it shall go into budgets.
Yes.
Those kind of structures, what exactly should they look like? And just going back into what Ndu was asking earlier, what should they look like? Are we talking about a county referral system on mental health? Are we talking about recruiting of staff and having staff there?
Counseling centers.
Is it counseling centers? Is it call centers? What kind of structures are we looking at?
Okay, so the first kind of structure we are looking at is integration of mental health within the healthcare facility. We are not saying go and build mental health institutions, no. We are saying whatever health institutions you have, make sure there are practitioners there who can deal with mental health. That's the first instance. Second is to have programs. Programs include what community health workers will do. So you hire community health workers and you task them with certain programs. Your work is to go into schools. Your work is to go into the village. Your work is to go from door to door, informing people about what is mental health, giving them information, have baraza sittings, sit with women groups, sit with men. You know how our men suffer. We need a whole paradigm shift when it comes to handling the mental health of men, especially in our villages. So we need to have such programs, running. When it comes to schools, for instance, schools, we've been calling for psychosocial support in schools. So the county governments can support with that, especially in the early childhood education, which falls under the county governments. But even for secondary schools, you can create programs such that, you have community health workers who go around in schools, creating safe places for our adolescent children to be able to have these conversations happening. So these are the sort of, programs and structures that we are talking about. And one beauty, I keep saying, we have a lot of NGOs, community-based organizations who've been working in the country in their own way, in their own small ways, who've already been tackling mental health issues with our citizenry. And the county governments can call on some of these. It's good that you know who are your stakeholders within the county.
Co-opt them into their program.
Co-opt them. Let them give you the ideas and even use them. Use them in running some of these programs. And I've met quite a number of them. In fact, recently I met one organization that is working in Kakuma. I mean, you can imagine what they deal with up there in Kakuma. And they're ready to engage with county governments. They're saying, okay, we are here. We want to give these, ideas because we have been on the ground and we know what is needed in this part of the country. We know what is needed in this other part of the country. So that is the sort of programs and structures we are calling out for. And budget lines have to be introduced.
As you say this, you're right. And you're talking about Kisumu. Mm-hmm. The same sort of input that Kisumu had, Homa Bay County, Migori County, Siaya County had. Mm-hmm. So it points to one thing, that Kisumu County has these structures maintained because some of them were created. It tells you about the leadership. It tells you about the intent and the understanding. So the participation of the governors, you say, Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, you look there. If you look at the Nairobi County, you will look at the NMS, you look at Dr. Uma Oluga. You see, with all these policies, if there are no people pushing it, and those who actually have the mandate to, you will have them, but they won't work. But when you have somebody or people who are charged and know what to do, then you see it happening very quickly. So that is where it's at. And I'm saying this because when you talked about getting the governors on board, you were spot on.
Yeah.
But now, how to get these current governors on board so that they actually get it and understand it? Because the sooner you start this thing, the better.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I target probably only 7 or 8 counties that have not started the programs as my focus for now, because we have to start somewhere. And
You
we
have
say this year, at least, or the next 2 years, we have managed in this number of counties. And that alone should help, create, other governors can then also begin to plug in. But then, as always, I call upon my stakeholders to help me with this conversation, because the conversation must continue and it must be loud. You must now, within this month of mental health, I am really calling upon you. Call in more experts. Call in these people who are running the focal persons in some of the counties. And there are several. There's Nairobi County, there's Kiambu County, there's a focal person there on mental health. Of course, Kisumu is doing something, Makueni. Call them in. Let's hear what the impact of what they're doing in their own small way has done for Kenyans. Because that alone is enough to wake up a few others. And it can also give voice to the champions who we have
That's
on
true.
the ground.
We're going to do
that's
that.
important.
And of course, you're going to start with your former senator colleagues. You are now governor,
Yes.
Mutula Kilonzo
Mutula
Jr.
Kilonzo, they
Now
seconded
Governor
this
James
act.
Orengo.
Governor Sakaja.
Governor
Call him-
Johnson
Yeah,
Sakaja.
we need
Those
him
are
to
3.
upscale. He must upscale Nairobi significantly. In fact, now, because he himself is a mental health champion. And, he had been doing his own, mental health campaigns in small ways. So now that he's governor Nairobi, I expect Nairobi to become the place where people come to learn on how to roll out mental health programs. Although, every county is different, but there's always some learning that can be done.
Thank you.
And something else, Eric, this act of parliament is very comprehensive. Today we are just talking about counties, but it has other aspects which I hope one day we can sit down and speak to, like the rights of people living with mental illnesses. Very critical provisions that Kenyans need to know what it has there for them. And that now we no longer need to have the stigma or to be fearful. Even access to mental health care, insurance companies cannot discriminate. And it's prescriptive. It
Very
is
good.
shall. Yeah,
Very
it is
good.
shall, which means now you can go to
do.
court. You can do a Nokia Mutata on these people.
And we expect you to take over. Now you swap places with Okiya Mtata. He's going to the Senate. Now you go to the
I go to
streets.
court. I go to the streets.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for coming. The Honorable Architect Sylvia Kasanga, former senator and now mental health champion, talking about integrating the amended Mental Health Act into county programs and county budgets.